Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Elwell, I think established in the questions with Senator Moran the long history of delegating certification. Let me ask a couple more questions about that. The Seattle Times recently reported that FAA technical experts and safety engineers said in interviews that they were urged to delegate more responsibility to Boeing during the 737 MAX certification process or to speed it up. Does the FAA still retain the mandate to certify aviation technologies that are new or novel?
Yes, Senator, we do. That is our authority, and it's our sole authority. We do not allow self-certification of any kind.
Were there any deviations from that policy in regards to the Boeing 737 MAX?
Sir, none of which I'm aware. We have a very good whistleblower program at the FAA. We encourage all levels of employees to report any activity that they find that doesn't go with our safety culture. And I looked into this personally. There were no comments made by employees to our knowledge. I can't speak to the Seattle Times article.
And it's your view that FAA managers did conduct the kind of reviews of that delegated authority that they're expected to conduct?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Well, let's go back to the investigation going on right now. I think, Mr. Sumwalt, you said that we were cooperating closely with the investigation, the Ethiopian investigation. Is that cooperating closely? Is that the right phrase?
Well, I'd actually say we are actively engaged. We have investigators on the ground in Ethiopia that are assisting and advising the Ethiopian government, as well as helping them to put together a draft interim report.
All right. Are they cooperating closely with you then?
Yes, sir, they are.
And are you getting access to all the information you'd like to have access to?
At this time, we are.
I know it's a much smaller agency than your agency in terms of budget and size and experience. How would you compare this investigation to other investigations you've been involved in? And what are you doing to make up differences if there are differences?
Well, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, because I'm not. The NTSB has a lot of experience with investigating crashes. We've been in business for 52 years. So we have a lot of experience. But as an accredited representative to foreign investigations, we often find that other countries do not have the resources that we do. So we are very experienced with working with other countries, other states, to help them. And I think that this investigation is going as it should. The Ethiopians, again, this is like I wasn't bragging, and this next statement is not a derogatory statement. They don't have the experience that we have because they haven't investigated the number of crashes that we have over the years. They're a relatively new agency. So they are proceeding very deliberately and very cautiously.
There was another comment made earlier about a prohibition unless information's been cleared by the host country. I believe the way I heard that was for you to share that information with others. Does that suggest that there's information that's not being shared with you?
I have no indication at all that the Ethiopians are not sharing with us the information that we need to make sure that we are aware of the safety-related information that we need to feed back to the FAA or feed back to Boeing to ensure continued airworthiness safety.
And those earlier comments were about whether you could publicly share that information without the host government agreeing with that. Is that right?
That is correct. However, the law does further state that nothing in this subsection shall restrict the board at any time from referring to a foreign accident investigation information in making safety recommendations. So in other words, if we identify safety-related information, that we need to make a safety recommendation, then we can use that information. But we would always want to coordinate that ahead of time with the state of occurrence.
So you don't feel unduly restricted by that prohibition of releasing information?
I do not, but it is, and to be clear, as you've characterized it, it is for the public release of information is what the law is specifically calling for.
That's helpful for me. Mr. Scovel, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Senator Blunt. Not on that particular question. Thanks for recognizing my signal just for a moment. I may have information that may help you and the committee in understanding the Seattle Times point that you mentioned in an earlier question. And I want to refer back to our 2015 audit report on ODA. In the course of that work, we reviewed 4 ODA company self-audits that identified employee concerns about undue pressure, which could lead to rushing safety critical tasks to meet production schedules. Now, I want to clarify, these were not U.S. DOT Inspector General audits. These were company self-audits that are required by FAA as part of its oversight process for ODA. It's unclear to us what FAA may have known about those company self-audits because I mentioned there were 4 of them. 2 involved Boeing, in fact, one in the Seattle area dating to 2013. The other was from Boeing's Charleston, South Carolina facility in 2014. The remaining 2 concerned Bell Helicopter, both in Fort Worth, 2013 and 2014. We didn't step into the shoes of the safety regulator. It's not in our lane to do that. But when we learned about the self-audits, we determined that it would be appropriate for us to make a recommendation to FAA that they find the best way to use those company self-audits in order to enhance their oversight of the company's ODA processes.
When would you have made that recommendation?
That was in 2015, sir.
And Mr. Elwell, do you know what the follow-up from FAA was on that recommendation?
I can help you on that too, sir. I'll pass to my colleague to take an answer on that. But I also have what is the auditor's answer as well.
And what was it?
We made the recommendation. FAA concurred. They took action to our satisfaction to address the recommendation, the intent behind it. And so we closed that recommendation. What remains to be done, and this is typical audit process, is to see how it's effectively implemented going forward. So when we close our recommendation, it means that the agency is poised to execute, but it may, in some cases, be a matter of years before we return to see the effectiveness of that implementation.
Mr. Elwell, do you want to add anything?
I'd like to thank the Inspector General. We did an audit of our whistleblower program, and so I need to go back and look at this self-audit information that General Scoville's talking about. And
you'll respond to the record with what you find?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr.